Hey crafty friends, it's Joy here for Honeybee Stamps. Today I made a different kind of Halloween card using some of the Lovely Layers collections from Honeybee Stamps. I'm going to be using the spider from the Toil and Trouble stamp set. Then there's the Lovely Layers Mum and the Lovely Layers Fall. So we're going to put this together to create a spooky Halloween card, but not with really, other than spiders, not with really any spooky images. We're just going to use color and distress techniques to create that spooky feel. So I have die cut my mums from white cardstock and I want to color them a really nice purple. I'm using Simon Says Stamps Positively Saturated Ink in Iris. Now, if you have colored cardstock, that's a nice purple that you like, you could skip this first step of ink blending the base color. I just did not have any. Purple is not my color, so I just really don't have anything that's dark like this, but I think I need to get some in my stash just for cards like this. So even if you had color cardstock, this next step you'd want to do. So I'm using a darker color. This is Galaxy and it's kind of a bluish purple, and I'm adding that at the base of all of the petals because the look that I want is I really want a dark, deep colored card, and I want everything to feel kind of old and just, I don't know, almost like it would be dusty, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm adding this darker color. So when you die cut the mums, there's a larger one and a smaller one, which is what I'm going to use for my card design today. And there's also some leaves. I'm not going to be using the leaves on that. I'm going to be using the leaves from the Lovely Layers Fall. There was a couple leaves. One of them looked just really Halloween-y to me, so I definitely used that one, and then I used a smaller one. So here are those leaves, and I am going to ink blend these with some Crackling Campfire. I wanted a really deep orange that feels almost like it's on fire. But we're going to tone everything down here in just a little bit with some black soot. So this is how we're going to make it kind of dingy and old looking. So, okay, these other small leaves I'm going to do in Hickory Smoke, and then I will also bring the black soot in onto that because I wanted something to break up the purple and the orange. So I thought using kind of a gray black leaf would do the trick. Okay, I have a small blender brush here, and something that I like to do is what I'm doing here on these last three, not the first one. I have ink on my brush. I actually have my brush tilted to the side just a little bit, and I'm just kind of ramming it into the paper, and it really catches the ink nicely on the edges. So that's what I'm going to do for these leaves. Then for the orange leaves, I'm going to get rid of most of the orange, leaving it kind of on the tips, having the centers really kind of dark, and just, there's no right or wrong to this, but I want to really tone down that really orange, that really deep orange. But as you can see, it's turning out so pretty. I love how this card turned out. I definitely got the vibe that I was going for. Okay, now I've got the center of the large mum, and I am bringing in the black soot on that because I want that to be dark. And then I'm going to go back in and add some more black soot, a little bit on the edges, and then a lot at the base. I really want this again to feel nice and dark. And this is perfect. And when you're using a small blender brush, it is so much easier to get where you need to get, and you don't over ink, because I tend to have a problem with that when I'm using a larger blender brush for stuff like this, where you just need it to be a little bit smaller. I tend to definitely over ink, and I don't want to lose the purple that I have going on here. So definitely a smaller blender brush is perfect. Then there was a little tiny piece that I just did the black soot. That's kind of the base of the small mum. So you'll see how that goes together here in just a little bit. So again, just adding a little bit to the edges. You could also swipe this on your ink pad if you wanted to, and that would be kind of cool. You know, that kind of old distressing technique from like a bajillion years ago. So I'm just going to finish these up. There is no rhyme or reason to this. I'm just keeping it quick and easy. And again, because you're distressing something, it doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'm going to add more of that black soot to the center of these flowers. Again, I'm still using that small blender brush because I don't want to lose all of that purple that we already worked for. And then after I'm done with this, we can get these glued together. So I kind of laid them out together to line them up, and I'm just going to pick up the top piece and work from the top down if I can get my glue to work. And so I'm going to adhere those with my reverse tweezers and my Bee Precision liquid glue from Honeybee Stamps. And then you can see how pretty this mum is. I'm not a huge fan of mums in general, but at the same time, like when I'm driving past a house and their patio is covered in them for fall, I do think it's really pretty, and it's probably the colors. So going with purple was just, it felt very witchy, so that's why I decided to do purple for the mum. And then of course bringing in a little bit of orange on the leaves. Okay, so this is the center. I'm going to get that glued into place. And then I'm also going to share with you how I'm going to add a little bit of dimension to the leaves and to the petals, because I did not want this to be flat. Again, this felt just really old and witchy, and so I just needed it to feel that way. First, let's do some splatter. I took my black soot to my work surface, added some water, splattered that on the background, and I liked it. It just wasn't dark enough, so I actually brought in the black soot spray stain, and that added a darker black to this. So I'll show you that in just a second, but I don't mind this on the background because it gave me two colors of splatter, and I'm just using a small paintbrush to get that done. Okay, so here is that spray stain. I'm not going to spray it on. I just want to tap it and get lots of spots everywhere. And I loved how this turned out. This definitely aged it and made it look craggly. That's the word I'm going to use. Okay, I'm going to use some tweezers and my fingers to just kind of bend this. I also had a ball stylus tool that I was kind of bending around. That didn't work so well on these leaves, so I ended up using the tweezers. But for the petals of the flowers, I'm just going to use my fingers and lift those up and get some dimension in there. You could also add some foam tape behind each one of these layers if you wanted it to really have dimension, but I wanted the petals to stand up. So here I'm using my reverse tweezers and just kind of bending backwards on the edges of the leaves, and then using my fingers to kind of crease it in the center just a little bit. I mean, you could definitely get more dimension than what I'm doing. I wanted just a little bit, so not everything laid flat, and it just felt a little more realistic. So you can see how quick this is going, taking those reverse tweezers, bending back the edges of the leaves, and then bending it in the center kind of in on itself. So I'm going to finish up these last couple of leaves, and then we can get this together. You guys, I'm also going to be using some foundry wax, so definitely hang on for that because this is my first time using it, the Distress Foundry Wax, and I am so excited about it. I'm using Mind on this, and I'm so glad I did, and that totally changed this whole card visually. It just absolutely is stunning. So I added some foam tape behind that large flower, and then everything else I'm just going to tuck in. The background patterned paper is Honeybee Stamps Spooktacular, and I loved all the spider webs because I wanted to bring in some spiders, so I thought that this was perfect. Plus it's dark and you have a little bit of white on it, so you have something that's breaking up all the dark colors, but it's perfect. Okay, for my spider legs, I was using a ball stylus and just gently rolling the spider legs down so it gave them a little bit of three-dimension look, because I'm going to add some foam tape under their bodies so they'll pop up. And it looks like they're actually crawling and they're not just flat spiders. So the first two I'm going to have foam tape on. The third one I decided to not have foam tape. And I'm going to have him where he's a little bit on the spider webs and the leaves. Okay, so here's the foundry wax. Shake it up really good. You will hear the little ball shaking in there. I'm going to put a little bit on my work surface. Like I said, this is the first time I've used it. And I'm just going to use my fingers to put it on all of the edges of everything. I do bring in a paintbrush in just a little bit, and I'll show you that just for the spots that I really couldn't get to because I did not want to get this on the background. I just And I really didn't want it on the spiders, although I did get it on one of the spiders, but it was totally fine. But I'm going to rub it on all the edges, and you guys can see it a little bit, but the magic happens when we take the heat gun to it. So I'm just trying to get all the tips of everything, the centers of the flowers, and I'll be honest, I did not know how fabulous this was going to turn out to be until it started melting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this. But this is going to make all of this just really pop, especially that mum. Look at that. Oh my gosh, I'm in love with it. So I decided to put on a little bit more. I didn't want to overdo, but I definitely wanted more than I had originally put. And I just think it's so fabulous on these leaves, on the tips of the petals of the flower. So a little bit more, and this wipes off your hand really, really easy, just FYI. And I'm just taking a look at everything. I realized I didn't glue that flower or that leaf down. And here's where I'm going to bring in a really small paintbrush just to add at some areas that I couldn't reach with my finger. And again, heating it, and it melts super, super fast. I'm also going to use this on my sentiment because I needed to kind of tone it down. I'm using the Hocus Pocus stamp and coordinating die for the sentiment, and of course my sentiment says Hocus Pocus. I prepped my black cardstock with a powder tool. I'm sprinkling on white embossing powder, and I'm going to heat that until it's melted, and then I can use the coordinating dies to die cut this out. So you'll see here in a second how bright white it is compared to the rest of the card, which is why I said I needed to tone it down. So here is more of that Mind Distress Foundry Wax, and I'm going to rub it on the edges, and I got some on the embossed powder, the already melted embossed powder, and I decided to actually rub a little bit more on. I heated it up and then decided to rub a little bit more on, and it really caught in like the small little bumps of the melted embossing powder, which I really liked that look. So that's where I'm rubbing a little bit more on here, and then I'm melting that. I will use some foam tape behind this because you guys know I love foam tape behind my sentiments because I love the dimension, and I'm just going to pop that in place, and it just fits in here perfectly. And I just felt like this sentiment was perfect for this type of card. It almost looks like a floral arrangement that could be on a witch's hat. So here it is up close. You can see all that beautiful foundry wax, all the fun distress inking, those gorgeous die cuts, and that fun patterned paper in the background. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you feel inspired, and I hope that you enjoyed this project. Have a wonderful day, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye.